Welcome back. We are at question 5 of going back in and reflecting on the 21 questions that I ask myself at the end of every year. I'm sort of doing a mid-year reset, and we are at question 5. And this question is, oops, wrong page. This question is, what are your weaknesses among men and women and why? And this one is something that's really important to me because I think that I know throughout this year that has been the main thing that I've been working on is improving my relationships, men and women. And I ask this question because I think as a person who came from an estrogen-rich family, was educated at an all-women's college, I have developed significant biases about men and about women. I have also developed a very specific perspective about men and about women. And it's because, right, in my childhood, I come from an estrogen-rich family. We don't have a lot of men in our family, so I didn't witness a lot of men or maleness around me. And then a lot of the men or maleness around me was geared more negative than it was positive. And then after those formative years, I went into a college for 5 years where I was single sex educated. And it was amazing. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I highly recommend single sex education. It is very powerful. And also it comes with its limitations. And so I think one of the reasons why I included this question in the journal is because I realized that I needed to make a concerted effort to think about what weaknesses, as a result of that conditioning, education, etc., what weaknesses have I developed as a person in regards to being around women and in regards to being around men, because it's easy for me to be able to identify the strengths. It's easy for me to be able to see how empowering it was. It's easy for me to be able to see how it has net positive on my life, but it's a lot harder for me to understand the relationship between the weaknesses. And it's important to understand that because we're moving around in the world where you're going to experience men and women. And so with this particular one, I was very, very honest. So we'll start with the women and then we'll go to the men, and I'll tell you and then I'll give my explanation. But what I said, my number one weakness that I realized coming towards the end of last year and I wanted to work on as I was moving towards this year is my weakness among women is that I find myself in an authoritative position. And then what I said was my weakness among men is that I'll say now I'm a former misandrist, but I was very much a misandrist and didn't even know it, like very unconscious about it. And so the reason why I say that this one, in terms of really, I'm so glad I wrote this down at the end of the year, because there's conscious times when I'm working on this, but then because it was top of mind, there are unconscious times when I'm working on this. So for example, with women, the reason why I find it a weakness among women to always be in an authoritative position is because that means I'm not finding myself in a position where women are pouring into me. I'm always in the position where I'm pouring into other women. And that doesn't set me up for the level of happiness and peace and contentment and enjoyment in life that I want, because it means that I'm always in the position of authority. I'm always in the position of offering advice. I'm always in the position of like sharing and helping and serving. It means that I'm always in the position of giving with women, and I'm rarely in the position of receiving. And that is not a posture that I want to have when I'm around women all the time. And so what I've been doing over this year, and even before I got pregnant, like at the very, very beginning of this year, is I have been intentionally making sure that when I am engaging with my friends, when I'm engaging with my family, when I'm engaging with any woman really, that instead of me taking the natural role of leadership, authority, advice giver, know-it-all, I've just been saying a lot of like, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I have no idea. What do you think? And it hasn't been like an I don't know, and because I'm trying to play you, it's been a genuine, like, I don't know. And what's fascinating is one of my friends, she actually recognized this. And this was something that I recognized through therapy. Like, and you guys know in therapy, I do internal family systems is one of the therapeutic interventions that I use. And internal family system is sort of like a parts concept. And I was aware that I had this part when I was a teenager, that in order to survive and in order to be safe, I just realized that if I knew the answer to something, then I would be safe and then I would be better. So fast forward 100,000 years and I'm a fully grown adult woman, and I feel like every situation that I'm in with other women, I just have to know. But that is exhausting. And again, it doesn't position me to be able to receive. And I want to be able to receive, because if I'm constantly giving and I'm never receiving, then I'm out of balance. And so me in therapy being able to realize that that part of me that always needs to know, that's super authoritative, super advice giving, whatever, is a bit of a not a bit, but it was a coping mechanism that I adapted to. So what is that, maladaptive? Yeah. So yeah, it was a coping it was a there it is. It was a maladaptive coping mechanism, and I don't want to have that moving forward. Like, I want to be able to have relationships with women where there's more equity and there's more equality in the exchanges that we have. But if I'm not surrounding myself with women that I will even allow to pour into me, or I'm not shutting up long enough to let a woman tell me something, you know what I mean? Like, if I always have to give my opinion, I'm not giving anybody any room to even try. So I say that to say, at the beginning of this year and over this year, the more I've said, I don't know, it hasn't been because I'm like, I don't know, let me see if they'll figure it out. No, it's genuinely been an I don't know. And then I like just wait to see what this other woman will say to me. Either, like, let's just say a friend is coming to me for advice, or I'm going to her for advice. I noticed that the more I was willing to say, I don't know, and it was the truth, the more I got to hear other women's perspective and other women's insight. And the more I was able to posture myself as the receiver in the relationship, I was able to posture myself as the person getting wisdom like poured onto me. And the fuller I feel. And so I think about some of the things that have come up at the beginning of the year with women, like my younger sister. Like, she has such incredible insight, and I didn't realize that because of this maladaptive coping mechanism, I'm stifling all this insight that my sister has, because even when I'm going to her for advice, my posture is always, well, I'm in the position of authority, so I'm gonna tell you how it is, versus like, no, my sister is grown and she could tell me how it is on some things too. And so letting her pour into me in that way has been transformative. Like, it's been this really beautiful thing, and this really beautiful healing thing that's happened between me and my younger sister, versus me always having to be in the know. Same thing with my aunt, same thing with my mom. Like, even as wedding planning has begun, like, don't get me wrong, with wedding planning, I need to have my own ideas and I need to make those decisions, but also letting my mother's wisdom about what we should and should not do, or why, letting her pour into me, as opposed to me being like, well, this is my wedding and it's gonna go, like, it's like, no, like, I'm gonna take this wisdom from my elders. And also and I had mentioned this in something on Instagram about rereading books from Dr. Maya Angelou, and just rereading different books and letting my elders legitimately pour into me so that I can overcome this weakness, because it is a weakness to always be in a dynamic between women to women. To always be the person of authority is problematic, because I'm not learning anything, I'm not gaining anything, I'm not receiving anything, and ultimately, when it's super far out of whack, I am completely imbalanced. And so I've been doing a really good job working on that this year so far, and I'm going to continue to do that, because I want my relationships with women to be better. So even my posture as it relates to my pregnancy, and like, right, like, I'm having a daughter, like, this is going to be a woman, allowing what my pregnancy needs, ultimately what my baby girl needs, to dictate what I do, instead of me being like, no, I'm the authority, this is what I'm, no. If this bump is like, we can't eat this anymore, or we're hurt this way, or we need to rest, or I'm like, let me defer to her. I don't always know. And I need to understand that when I'm in a room of women, I don't have to always know. And here's the thing, it's not the same thing with men. Oftentimes, if I'm in a room with men, I will let a man have a measure of authority, which is wild to me, as I'm about to say this next thing. So the thing that I noticed, so that's my weakness among women, is that was the dynamic that I was creating. That was the posture that I was always holding. And over this year has been so much better in me taking a more equal posture among women, whether they are my peers, whether they are my elders, whether they are conversations around my ancestors, like just taking a more equal posture and just not having to be the person in the room who knows. Now, my weakness among men, and I had mentioned this on the Instagram live, is understanding and learning. Like last year I learned that I was a misandrist, and just look up the definition of a misandrist. And I know that sounds intense and it sounds crazy, and it's like, how could you be a misandrist? You have a son, you talk about your son, how much you love him. And here's the thing, and I'm going to use this language, and I don't know if YouTube is going to like take it down, but the best way to explain it is that, like, when you think about a misandrist, and short, like a short definition of it is, a misandrist is a person who has like contempt or deep prejudice for the male sex and like very low regard, like little to no respect. Like I had no idea that deep down that's actually how I felt about men. But when I look at my history, I'm like, oh, of course this is the reason. Of course I feel this way about men. I come from an estrogen-rich family. I was educated in a single-sex environment. Of course I feel superior to men. And it's not like a healthy level of superiority. It is a very unhealthy level of superiority. And I realized it because as my partner was just showing up as a man, I was pissed all the time. And I'm like, why am I so pissed off? Like, he's not doing anything. And it would totally be different if he was actually doing anything, which, again, thank God for therapy, because if it wasn't for therapy, the trauma that I have around men would have overrode my ability to even think through and realize, oh, this is not an issue. This is not a trigger. This is not about trauma. This is, oh, you have a belief. And the only thing that I can compare to, and when I was talking to my good girlfriend, this is how I explained it. It's like a racist. There are people who are raised racist and they don't know that they're racist, right? They don't know that they have an inherent belief that Black people are inferior. And they don't know that they do subtle things to express this belief, right? You can look a racist person in the face who is just raised in an environment to be racist versus people who are overtly racist. They know they're racist. It's different. And I was explaining to my friend, I was like, me realizing this, I feel like how when a racist person realizes that they're unconsciously racist because they were simply raised to be, not because they chose to be. But at the end of the day, you still think you're superior, and you still function and move around move around Black people or a different race as if you are. And so when I was explaining this to her, I was like, I didn't realize that I did this with men. I didn't realize that like underneath my outward display of affection, love, respect, regard, deference, etc., that it was performative. Like I didn't know. Like I didn't know that it was performative. And I didn't know it was performative because a lot of it was buried under trauma. But once the trauma got healed, there was no reason for me to perform like this anymore, but then I didn't know how to function around them. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And here's the thing, if you go back on my Instagram, because I've been sharing my answers, I think since 2019, but if you go back on my Instagram, you'll see, I think in 2019 or 2020, I was like, my weakness among men is like, I fold up like a lawn chair, and I don't know why I do that. It's because even though I had very little genuine respect for men, my safety as it relates to my trauma was like, you gonna at least pretend like you have respect for them. And so I didn't realize that before I would fold like a lawn chair, not because I was genuinely in a space where I'm feeling respectful and it just required it. The ask of me was to fold or to compromise or to whatever, but like I would do that to protect myself, but I would be seething on the inside. So whatever environment that I was in, where there was a man of authority or there was a man of power, even if there was a man who was equal to me, in 2019, I talked about how I would fold like a lawn chair. So now fast forward, I'm healing, I do my therapy work, I no longer don't feel safe around men. So I got through all of that, but I'm still here and I have this contempt for them. I have this like, you're not better than me. I have this like low level grade of like, you're kind of dumb. You're kind of like this sounds terrible to say out loud, but I think it's helpful for people to understand that like sometimes you can have something that you don't even realize you have. And it's just like, And I've talked about this before, like I'm not a feminist. And so I think because I was like, oh, because I'm not a feminist, of course I love men. But no, the feminist doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you're a misandrist. Like it doesn't have anything to do with it. It's like this seething, low grade hatred that I had for men, that it was just this trapped inside of a deep part of me. I was like, holy smokes, I don't like maleness. I don't like men. And so I know some of you might be asking, like, well, if you don't like men, how did you raise your son? How did you get to a place where you're co-parenting with your son's father? What about your dad's? They're all exceptions to the rule, right? So the same way that a racist will be like, I'm not a racist, I have a black friend. It's because they have placed that black friend in a separate category from the black race. That's what I was doing with my son. It's like, I love men. I have a son. I love men. Me and my son's father co-parent. Like, I respect men. I respect my son. It's like, but first of all, it's my son, my son's father. So it's very possessive, right? But they are not a part of the whole. And that was the problem, is that I didn't see my son as a part of the whole of men. I didn't see my son's father as a part of the whole of men. And some of it, again, through trauma, that's why I made them the exception to the rule. But once that healed, and I was like, holy smokes, this particular sex in general, I have a very low regard for them, and I need to clean it up. And I want to clean it up because now that I'm healthy enough to be in a relationship with another healthy person, I can see how I'm treating him like more from utility, right? Because if you think about the opposite of a misandrist, is a misogynist. And everybody's really familiar with the misogynist and how a misogynist can be in a whole relationship. A misogynist can be married. A misogynist can have 5 daughters, right? Like, so can a misandrist. A misandrist can be in a whole relationship, have 5 sons, right? It's not like you having the belief stops you from engaging in activities with the opposite sex. It's that you having this belief causes you to treat the opposite sex in an inferior way. And I didn't realize that I was doing that. And I didn't realize I was doing that until, again, in this relationship with the level of health where I'm not experiencing him through my trauma and then being justified in how I'm treating him. Healing the trauma means that you can't just be treating people like they're utilitarian. This is a person. And I'm like, men are people? Like, I'm telling you, blew my mind. But I say all that to say, that's my weakness among men. If I look at the answers that I've shared publicly and I go back into my other journals, I'm like, holy smokes, this has been going on for a very long time. So what I've been doing over this year is everything that I can to dismantle these misandrous like beliefs. And again, when I was talking to my friend, because she was just like, do you think you need to break up? Do you think you should get out of your relationship? And I'm like, no, because the way that I imagine it, a racist doesn't need to stop spending time with Black people, for example. No, a racist needs to immerse themselves in the Black culture so that they can stop having prejudices about them. They can stop judging it. They can stop seeing it as inferior. They actually need to engage with the thing that they have these problematic beliefs about, and they need to engage with that particular group from a place of curiosity, not from a place of judgment, not from a place of fixing, not from a place of any of those things. And so for me, I was like, thankfully, I have an amazing partner, right? And also, thankfully, I have an incredible therapist. So I'm not projecting all of this out on him. I'm just doing my work. But I'm like, no, it's not for me to end my relationship because I'm realizing that I have these beliefs. It's for me to dismantle these beliefs. And the only way to dismantle these beliefs is to integrate what I know. I have incredible men around me. I need to integrate them into the population of men, because there are like 5 men that I think are amazing. But those 5 men are the exception to the rule. They're not regular men. These are like superhero level men. And it's like, no, you have to integrate them. So this one has been very powerful. It has been transformative for my romantic relationship. It's been transformative for my relationship with my son. Because again, I didn't know that I was like unconsciously slipping in thoughts, feelings to my own child that reinforce this level of misandry, which is so wild. It's helped my relationship with my bonus dad, with my biological dad. Like, it's really been an incredibly powerful thing just to be able to first become aware that's my true weakness, is that I'm a misandrist. I didn't like men. And then to, out of that awareness, allow myself first the space to exist in it, shame-free, so that way what needed to be done could begin to get done, and to see how I'm different around men. It's subtle. Like if you don't probably know me personally, or you're not like in the house with me, you probably wouldn't know it. But to see how I move now around men, because I don't think I'm superior to them, goodness VP, is incredible and amazing and mind-blowing. And so that's question 5. I hope that that's helpful. Again, these questions are designed for you to self-reflect so that you can learn more about yourself. Learn more about yourself so that way you can understand how to intentionally create the life that you want. It's like, when I think about this particular weakness among men, and I think about a few years ago, and when I'm in therapy and I'm going through all this stuff, some of how I knew what to work on is because I was willing to say, well, what is your weakness among men? What is your weakness among women? I knew what to work on because I could feel myself not measuring up even to my standard. And then as therapy started to taper off because I was healing, even now I'm like, I want to be in a deeply passionate, healthy, romantic, lifelong committed relationship and marriage with this man. How do I get from here to there if I don't reflect on the ways in which I might be sabotaging my own relationship? Because deep down, I don't even like men. This is why we self-assess. We don't self-assess so that way we can go out and change the world. We self-assess so that way we can see where, if any place, we might need to change ourselves, and not change ourselves because something is wrong. Change ourselves because the life that we want it's requiring that. If I want to be in a deeply passionate, healthy, super fantastic romantic relationship, I can't be a misandrist. That's not going to work. Right? In the same way, if the situation was reversed and a man was like, man, I just really want to be in a deeply passionate relationship with a woman. Well, you can't be a misogynist. If that's what you really want, you can't be that and get this. And so in that gap, because you were able to self-assess and self-reflect, you can say, oh, okay, out of this awareness, what potential changes can I make? And then you can begin to make them. And so that is question 5. I will talk to you tomorrow.